Happy Saturday, lovely lurkers. Welcome to another Saturday morning review. What do you think about Diablo IV? Perry Mason's new case? Exploring even more strange new worlds? Sweating it out to the Covenant? And our review of The Flash.
Don't worry, we'll take our time. Come along for the ride. Let's lurk. Scott, what the hell is Perry Mason's new case?
Oh, yeah, I'm glad you asked. Perry Mason is like a super old show that I remember my parents watching. It was black and white, courtroom drama. Well, they decided to reboot it on HBO before it was HBO Max. Before it was Max. And did you ever watch The Americans?
On the news every week, unfortunately.
Oh, okay. Remember that person
True
you
Patriots.
had no idea who they were a couple episodes back? Felicity, not Felicity.
That doesn't refine anything. That's all of them.
Do you remember Carrie Russell? How I give you so much shit for not knowing who Carrie Russell was?
Yes, still don't remember who Carrie Russell is. Looking it up right now.
Anyway, her husband is Perry Mason.
Okay.
What's his name? Look it up. You can Google it.
Timothy Russell? Matthew Rhys?
Matthew Rhys. Yeah.
Rhys. Okay.
He's Welsh.
Oh, God. Oh.
And you couldn't tell. He's one of those European actors who does a perfect American accent. But anyway, a couple years back, they rebooted it. It is this gritty noir. He's a private detective, gumshoe kind of person who then suddenly transitions into being a lawyer in that first season. The case is very dark and mystical, almost. Mm-hmm. It was really good. And even though it doesn't necessarily leave you with a good taste in your mouth because of how dark the story is, you can't deny the acting or the story, the writing, the character development, all of the good things that we want in a solid show. And they're just running it back here in season 2. Everything kind of seems the same, but you just can't deny like the draw of this drama.
So that's what you've been watching this last week?
That and a little show called Star Trek Strange New Worlds.
Okay, tell me more.
Second season starts off with a bang. We've got the entire crew coming back, a few new faces. No spoilers, but I can't beat this dead Enterprise any more than I already have. What I will say, though, is if you've never watched Star Trek, this is the Star Trek to start with. Strange New Worlds is meant to be nostalgia for the older audience and gravitas for the new audience. It is where old and new Trekkies can come together. Trekkers just want to be sensitive to everybody's needs. If you had no idea that Star Trek existed, I would recommend this show to you. It's that good.
Interesting. I mean, like IMDb's rating of it is 8.2 out of 10. Clearly, it's getting really rave reviews.
Yeah, and it's all a prequel to everything else in the canon. So you don't have to watch anything. You don't have to know that Star Trek was a show, and you can just enjoy the heck out of this.
The place I struggle with with Star Trek,
we know that.
I think a lot of where I think like a lot of other listeners might agree with me, or those that aren't in this world, is it's almost like Pokemon. There is so much of a world that is built up that you don't even know where to jump in. So there's this challenge of like, is this something I'm ready to invest in?
If you like science fiction, yes. That's something you can totally get into. You're going to learn, you're going to be introduced to all the characters kind of from the beginning, from their inception into the world, and you can kind of run from it from there.
Now, there's been nothing really controversial about Star Trek over the years, but this week there was some controversy. There was some controversy around Diablo IV.
Oh, yeah.
Did you hear about what happened here?
I mean, I heard several things, but tell me what you heard.
Well, you and I are big fans of the franchise Destiny, made by Bungie.
Yes.
On Twitter this week, a dev for Bungie came out and tweeted something about the leveling system of like characters where they auto level to your
Sure. Yeah, I know
skill
what you mean.
level.
Yeah.
Is lazy developing.
Oh.
This is a Bungie employee tweeting that, referring to Diablo 4's enemy leveling based on where your level's at.
Yeah. In most video games, like, you gain levels, you gain power, armor, whatever, and then the enemies kind of scale with you.
Scott, the head of Blizzard, tweeted back and said, "Interesting coming from you," or something similar to that effect. Like,
they're starting a tweet war.
Yeah, and the thing that's so crazy about this, I know you put Diablo 4 down here, but I've been doing a ton of like research around like, how has this become such a big thing? I am in a clan for Destiny. I don't know, such a nerd, and we've broken out the Discord into a Destiny clan and a Diablo one. It is the same kind of game as Destiny in terms of it being a looter shooter, open world experience with seasonal content, right? So it's a live game. And people that have never played a Diablo game are coming into this franchise and saying, this is amazing. This is Blizzard's best-selling game of all time.
That's
and
crazy.
They have World of Warcraft.
Let's not look too closely at those numbers, just because we're probably wrong.
Idiots. Yep.
What I will say for my experience is that growing up, we had a computer in the house, but we did not have the internet right away. I didn't have internet on a computer until I went to college. That makes me sound old. That's because I am. So, fuck off. This was one of the first game franchises that I ever was introduced to in terms of like PC gaming. I had the original Diablo 2. I stepped away because Diablo 3 came out and I hadn't played it in a really long time. I was invested in other franchises, but I eventually bought like the, gold, all of the things pack that they come out with. I don't know what they called it, just Hellfire Edition at the very end. And I ran through it. It felt almost like a little too easy. It was like, this is kind of what I remember from Diablo, but I beat it maybe like 10 hours. And I was like, oh, maybe they just want me to go through and run through each class and run through all of the story again and again and again, which I didn't necessarily want to do. This was getting a lot of hype, and mostly because it took forever to come out. I was hesitant to download it. Number one, because it's been upped in price. Number two, because yes, Blizzard has been known for their predatory game add-ons.
Right.
Cosmetic here, there, and whatnot. They just want you to keep like pouring money into it. They don't want you to go to other games. They want you to be in the Diablo universe, and that's it. The opening cinematic sequence for this game terrified me. It looked like a horror movie, and I've said on the shows multiple times, I don't like scary things. So let's just say I was very fortunate that the sun was high in the sky when this cinematic sequence was playing, because holy crap. They don't call it Diablo for no reason. And the gameplay is very familiar, so people who have played it or have played isometric top-down type of games will flow right in. And I haven't played very far. I'm just like on the first kind of opening training sequence area. But it's good, and I feel like I'm a little kid again on my Dell. Dude, I got a Dell. Just looking up at the screen with my keyboard and mouse non-ergonomically set, clicking and destroying evil left and right.
Well, so if this is a game that you're interested in or you're looking to fill some time, people are loving Diablo 4.
It's a good thing to get into right now. Highly recommend.
Now, one of the things I'm into, and I don't really share this very often because it's usually something that I watch on my own, but growing up, I really loved watching like military style movies, even though like that isn't something I want to do. I just find the actual like storytelling really fascinating, really engaging.
The industrial complex is working.
Yeah. Well, Guy Ritchie came out with a movie this year called The Covenant.
I heard of it.
And Jake Gyllenhaal and Dar Salim are the two kind of leading actors in this movie. And so I watched that this week. And I'm going to give my non-spoiler review here, and then we'll get into our big review for the week. This movie follows a captain of a team, the head, Jake Gyllenhaal, and an interpreter. This interpreter chooses to not just translate, but interpret the meaning behind what the enemy and what the people in this area are saying. And so quickly, things take a turn for the worst. And this dynamic duo has some tension, but you really track down their kind of fight out of enemy territory and back to safety, and it has some ups and downs and swings. It's rated like a 7.5 out of 10. Wow. If you're into that type of movie, I think you'll enjoy it.
Guy Ritchie, great director.
Yep.
Jake Gyllenhaal, very easy on the eyes.
Mm-hmm.
I saw a couple clips on TikTok about this, and I was actually very interested. I just haven't gotten around to watching it yet. Correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the story beats happens to be the translator maybe getting left behind and Jake Gyllenhaal having to go back into enemy territory to try and get him? Or is that a different movie?
There's something similar to that in this movie.
Oh, okay,
yes.
okay. It looks good to me, so check it out.
Speaking about going back, we have a controversial review.
Maybe controversial for you, but mine's pretty straightforward. Look at this. We're already arguing. This is great.
I know. Last night we went and saw the movie The Flash with the not-so-lovable Ezra Miller. And let's give our non-spoiler review, and then we'll jump into spoilers for the rest of the episode.
This movie is what the DCEU should have been doing the whole time. It's funny, action-packed, has tons of nostalgia, tie-ins to other DC franchises, and the best part is it makes you forget any outside controversy that was happening potentially with anybody else. You don't even realize that you're enjoying a movie that has controversy tied to it because it's that good.
I went into this movie hoping that it would be lackluster, that we would look back and say, here's another example of where Warner Brothers has failed us. Mm-hmm. They don't know how to deliver on the DC universe, and they're just going to recycle characters, and they're going to bring them in ways that feels, lacking any sort of freshness or unique story beats. And what I found, surprisingly, is Ezra Miller in this role is very likable. Is a surprise standout performance. And I say that separating the performance of the actor from their terrible actions outside of this movie. And I want to point out a few other things. This is, in my opinion, a mid-tier level of how to deliver a multiversal experience. It seems like everybody's doing that, right?
Yeah.
From Everything Everywhere All at Once, across the Snyder-verse, the MCU and the DCU, we're getting multiverses everywhere. And if across or Everything Everywhere All at Once, I think is like the pinnacle of what a multiverse should look like. This is right in the middle. I don't think it was perfect. I wasn't a huge fan of the way that was expressed, but to Scott's point, this movie is funny. It hits on nostalgia regardless of the age that you were. And something you said before the movie started, you said, one of my friends said that this is one of the best Batman movies. Yes, if you are a fan of the games, any of the Batman games, the Arkham Asylum games, this will play homage to that version of Batman right off the bat. You will feel connected to Ben Affleck's Batman and be like, this is it. This is the Batman we've been wanting for a long time. And surprisingly, the villain of this is understandable, and that's something that the original DC movies has failed.
Okay.
Right? Think about the Justice League. What was the big bad? The big bad was like, I'm coming here to destroy the Earth, and I have no reason to tell you why. It doesn't matter. I am the bad guy. And the villain in this, you know why. You know why they're making the choices that they're making. You know the impetus for what brings them to to the end result. And that's what I think made this movie a success.
Now, going forward from here on out, we're going to be doing spoilers. So if you want to stop because you haven't seen The Flash, and I understand most of you haven't or will not, thank you so much for hanging out with us today. We'll see you next week. But for everybody else who wants to stay, here we go. This is the best Batman movie that I've seen in a long time because Michael Keaton kills it. This movie was based off of something called The Flashpoint, a series or a run in the comics where the Flash decided to save his mom, just like he does in the movie. Except when he goes back, things are much darker in the comics. Have you read it or heard about it at all?
No.
So the Flash goes back. He runs into Batman. Batman is actually Thomas Wayne in the comics because Bruce was the one that was killed.
Ooh, interesting.
So I was wondering what they were going to do with the time because we all knew Michael Keaton was back, but we didn't know if he was going to be Bruce or if he was going to be Thomas. And
that's an interesting play, and I think they did a good job of bridging that story.
It was still like you were still questioning it until he finally admits who he is a little bit later when after they meet him, because when he says we're looking for Bruce, Michael Keaton has like this pained look on his face and he doesn't say anything. And then when they go and like steal the Batcave and they're like, I'm going to use all your shit. We're going to use all your bat shit. Michael Keaton is looking at Ezra Miller using all the equipment, and he like turns to the picture of his family and he rubs Bruce. He doesn't rub the parents at all. So like until that point in the movie, I thought he was going to be Thomas Wayne, not Bruce Wayne. But then we find out, just older Bruce fixed Gotham and said like, well, nobody needs me anymore. I'm just going to make spaghetti in my ghost mansion.
I do want to talk about the like orb, like that Flash kind of like orb that he created to like get in and out of different universes. Their storytelling of it being like different universes and how there's these inflection points and you can jump between them. I like that. I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. And that's kind of how I've always envisioned these type of universes playing out. Like even how when the Flash jumps back, when Barry first goes back to like the younger version of himself, how you could see small choices would have been made, right? Marty McFly isn't played by Michael J. Fox and instead is played by, what was the other actor's name?
Eric Stoltz, who originally was cast as Marty McFly in Back to the Future. Just didn't.
They filmed 90% of the movie. It was almost in post-production, and they were like, it's just not working. So then they refilmed the movie with Michael J. Fox.
Yeah.
Totally plausible. Kevin Bacon being in
Top Gun.
Top Gun, totally plausible. All of these types of decisions were like, yeah, I could see this playing out this way.
Yeah. That was cool. I like the spaghetti incident as a description for the multiverse. That felt good.
What did you think about the orb? Let's talk about that, like going in and out of the different flashpoints.
When he decides to try and change the past, he runs through the Speed Force, and there was that part where he turns into almost like a ribbon of himself, and then gets caught into this weird little orb, which looks like almost like a Roman Colosseum of time around him.
Yeah,
it was okay. They definitely could have done it differently, but what's a good way to show as many different points in time as possible? A circle's fine. An orb is probably even better.
The way the Tesseract was conveyed in Interstellar, I think, is the way you do it.
Remind everybody what that was like.
So it was these lines of ribbons and like replaying videos essentially of one space, one room. And as Matthew McConaughey's character is kind of flying through the Tesseract, he can see different points of time happening within that room. And it's more like this like multi-directional time display of that space.
Okay. Yeah, comparatively, I think The Flash was just doing a different version of that.
Mm-hmm.
One of the big controversies around that Tesseract is the CG or graphics that they decided to go with. Looked kind of second rate. Everything looked very almost gooey and shiny. It definitely, you could definitely tell like this wasn't a photorealistic version of that event. And I've seen some people try to say like, well, this is just from the way the Flash is seeing it. Like he's seeing all of this liquid time that has existed or will exist or will never exist. I don't know. It looked bad. Now, it looks really bad, honestly. In terms of a big budget movie, this was the best you could come up with. You'll see. When you see the movie, you'll see.
Can we talk about the nostalgia when the original Batman music comes in?
Ugh. I was very grateful to have my ears working in a way where I could hear things the way I remember them. But yeah, Danny Elfman's score being brought back for Michael Keaton's Batman, just, 6 to midnight right there, folks.
I remember when the bat plane comes down from the like inside the bat cave and then it goes out. I leaned over to Paul, friend of the show, and I go, I had that toy growing up.
And the Batplane's a little bit different from the original one.
Right.
The original one is actually almost identical to his chest plate logo. The one thing I was waiting for, and I was so happy it hit, is when they're flying to Russia and they eject, the Batplane kind of flies off on its own and goes in between the moon, just like in the movie. And I was like, yes! Thank you!
Now, do you think the way that they brought in the other Supermen, here's the big spoiler: the Flash, Barry from this new universe that we go into, is the bad guy, right? I think knowing that this version of Barry is going to fight tooth and nail and not just let an answer be unanswerable, the way his mom shared it with him when he was a little kid, right? Around like, how many versions of 24 can you answer? He has this uncontrollable urge to continue to resolve a problem until he gets it right.
Or finds the answer.
You get it.
Yeah.
You get it, because nobody wants to be the one to say, I let my parent die.
Or I was responsible for killing them because I did nothing. Yeah.
Now, did you catch why we saw the George Clooney Batman at the end and why it wasn't the same universe that Barry went into originally?
So my understanding was that he still hadn't like pinpointed what he wanted to do, but the guess was because in the movie, this is another big spoiler, everything comes down to a can of tomato sauce.
Yes.
Instead of it being on the bottom shelf, forcing his dad to look down, and he was wearing a hat, not revealing his face, didn't he say he moved all of the tomato sauce up to the top shelf so he would have to reach up and look and be on camera?
Yep. So he made a change.
He did make a change. The one thing that I didn't get at the very end, there's a stinger. Aquaman and the Flash are walking back after a drunken night out, or at least for Aquaman. He's explaining all the other Bruce Waynes and all the other Batmans, but we don't know if he went and actually stayed in the universe where his dad is saved, or if he tried to figure out a way, many times over again to figure out, how can I get my dad to look up?
It's interesting. I think the story they're telling about the Flash that we're probably going to see moving forward is it's a Flash that's willing to jump between universes and help.
But here's my hot take for this. It doesn't matter. I don't think James Gunn is moving forward with the Flash, at least not for Phase 1. And I don't think.
Do you think that's good?
Sure, yes. They definitely need parody. They need focus. They need less characters to mean more, a la MCU. Because that's what we're used to. That's what works. Unless he can come up with another formula that is better than this, which I don't see him doing, there is going to be a lot of pissed off people, at least DC fans.
Yep.
So this movie, while being great, and I mean, thank goodness it ended on this type of note, is irrelevant going forward. It's just going to be a fun movie that existed at some point in time. But why? Why? Like, why didn't it get scrapped? Warner Brothers said Batgirl was going to be harmful to the brand. What is this movie doing for the brand? It makes no sense why it was released.
My only guess is because there are so many cameos, there are so many people. The investment was more than Ezra Miller. You've got George Clooney, Michael Keaton, Ben Affleck, Ron Livingston. You've got Michael Shannon reprising his role as
Zod,
General Zod. The level of actors they got to play roles in this was too big for Warner Brothers to say we can just let this go. That's my guess. It became bigger than Ezra Miller.
Plus all of the alternate timeline cameos that we got, I don't know how they do this. I don't know how they summon. They maybe were playing some Diablo, beat the game, and summoned a Dark Lord to get Christopher Reeves and Nicolas Cage as Superman in this movie. Seriously, you wanted to talk about this, and I wanted to save it to the end, but like Ezra Miller doing all of these things, at least in theory, should have gotten this movie canceled a long time ago.
Agreed.
Or it should have gotten recast. What are we doing here? Why did this movie make it?
I don't know. I don't think it needed to. Don't get me wrong. Like this movie had a lot of entertaining things. It told an interesting story. We got that nostalgia beat. It is the kickoff movie for Sasha Calle, who's playing Supergirl.
Apparently going forward too. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think she did a great job. I was impressed with her role. I think she makes a good Supergirl. It's an interesting take. But no, if this was me, I would have went back to the drawing board and said, we need to do something different.
Can you remind me what they did that was the reason everybody thinks they are so heinous and that they should have been kicked off this movie?
I don't want to get this wrong, so let me just try to read a little bit of what Variety has reported on. It says, behind the scenes, though, Miller had troubles of their own. In April of 2020... they were caught on video appearing to choke a woman at a bar in Reykjavik, Iceland. The woman told Variety, I think it's just fun and games, but then it wasn't. And all of a sudden, they're on top of me, choking me, still screaming in my face. if I wanted to fight. My friend who's filming sees that they're obviously not joking and it's actually serious, so he stops filming and pushes them off of me as they're still trying to fight me. Now, nearly a year later, in March of 2022, Miller resurfaces and was arrested in Hawaii for disorderly conduct and harassment at a karaoke bar. They pled no contest to the charges and paid a $500 fine. So clearly, there's just this troubled person who is out there harassing others and not being able to control their anger. And we're giving them a platform to say, this is okay. Mm-hmm. I'll continue to fund your movies going forward.
Now, as far as I know, they haven't been in anything else besides this. And it could be time commitments. It could be this other thing. Have you heard any sort of, like, I don't know, rehabilitation process that they've been going through to try and change their image? Any apologies? Because I really haven't.
Ezra has made a public apology about they also had a felony charge for burglary in Vermont back in August of 2022.
Wow.
So they apologized about that, but I don't know. I think there's just so much going on there that they need to get help before I think we can reconsider them for any roles moving forward.
Yeah. And I think based on this ending of the former phase of the DCU and James Gunn moving it forward, he doesn't have to pick them for the Flash role. If anything, we learned about the multiverse and that other multiverses or other universes can exist, so we can start over with a clean slate and not have to talk about it for a while.
I will say that if you're apprehensive to watch this movie, wait for it to come out so you could maybe rent it or watch it on Max when it's streaming, so that way you
or other
lessen
places.
Your impact. But the nostalgia beats, seeing Michael Keaton, seeing some of the different Batman characters, seeing Supergirl's introduction, I do think the movie has a lot to be said and tells a really interesting story. That being said, I think it's fully understandable if you say, I'm not going to watch this.
Well, that's our show, lovely lurkers. Thanks for hanging out with us today. Please rate and review wherever you lurk.
We appreciate the love, so let's remember to be kind to each other, and we'll see you next week.